Now the first thing we're going to need to make our Sugna is some lard. We're going to make it from scratch today. So I stopped by the butcher earlier back and I picked up some fresh pork fat. I'm just going to cut the pork fat into some thin slices. And making lard is about as simple as it gets. We just need an oven, a pot, and pork fat, and that's it. Now take the thin slices, I'm going to put it into a pot. Ideally you want a heavy pot, so it could be a Dutch oven, cast iron, or in my case I'm using a thick visionware glass one, and that'll just keep the heat very even. When we're making lard, there's a few different ways people do it. You hear a lot of people say you need to put a little bit of water in the bottom of your pot. Because we're going to be using this lard to make our coating for our prosciutto, I want to make sure that there's no water whatsoever inside the lard, because the water can make it go rancid. So what we're going to do is we're not going to add any water at all, and we're going to cook it at a low temperature in the oven. At 250 degrees is a great temperature. It's going to melt the pork fat and turn it into a clear liquid. And it's not a high enough temperature that we're going to burn anything. You know, sometimes people say putting water in is going to keep your fat from burning or browning up. The truth is, if you keep your temperature low, as it should be, you're at no risk of browning up. It's going to take a little bit of time, so we're going to stick this in an oven at 250 degrees. I'm not even going to bother checking it till about 3 hours, and then I'm going to give it a turn. This is going to take maybe about 4 hours, maybe 5 hours until it turns into a liquid, and then we're going to drain it off. And that's as simple as it gets. You could make this up, well, a day, a week before, it doesn't matter. Well, here we go. We've got our fat all cut up into strips. I'm going to take a lid, put it over the top, stick it in the oven at 250 degrees, and we're just going to leave it sit, and we'll check on it in about 3 hours time. I've had the pork fat in the oven at 250 degrees for, I think it's about 6 hours now, and it's nicely rendered down. So I'm going to take it, I've taken the lid off, I'm going to take it and I'm going to strain it through a sieve with a little bit of cheesecloth, just to make sure that, any solid particulates don't go through. So we're going to pour that through, there we go. And before I make the Sugna out of a lard, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this to room temperature. It's going to start to turn white in color, get thicker, but it's not going to become rock hard, which it will when I put it inside the fridge. So if you're going to be making your lard a few days or weeks before, it'll keep perfectly fine in the fridge. Just make sure that you take it out of the fridge and you leave it for a few hours to come to room temperature, so it's going to be nice and soft and easy to work with. The lard is down to room temperature, so we're all ready to make the Sugna. We're going to mix equal parts of lard and rice flour. So when you're looking for rice flour, it'll often be in the ethnic section of a supermarket, or if you go into an Asian specialty food store, you're going to find that you do need to use rice flour for the Sugna. And we're going to combine equal weights, not equal parts. So it's not going to be by volume. You need to have a scale, so you're going to have to weigh your lard first, and then it's easy just to go ahead and weigh the amount of rice flour that you're going to put in. So I'm going to put the lard in a bowl. It's nice and workable. As I mentioned before, if you were storing your lard in the fridge, just make sure you bring it out and let it get to room temperature for a couple of hours. Okay, let's go ahead and mix in the rice flour. I don't add anything other than rice flour and the lard to make my Sugna. If you live in an area, maybe you're hanging it in a cellar where you may have the odd fly here and there, you can go ahead and add black pepper, just some coarsely ground black pepper into it. I've got a nice chamber area, so I don't need to bother doing that. It's not going to add any flavor to the prosciutto if you put the pepper in, so there's no downside to doing it. I'll combine a little bit with a spoon, but at the end I'm going to have to knead this the same way you would if you were making dough. So I've got washed clean hands. I'm just going to go ahead and start to combine that. Just work your dough slowly, and all of that lard and rice flour are going to combine. There we have it. We've got our Sugna mixed up. It is sticky as can be, kind of like peanut butter but white, and that's really the way that you want it. It's going to adhere very well to the prosciutto. So I'm going to clean my fingers off as best I can. Then I'm going to wash them up, and I'll show you through the next step of how we apply this onto the prosciutto. I've got clean washed hands. I'm going to start to apply it, and it's going to be messy. Not that it's going to fall everywhere, it's just going to be really messy and sticky on my hands. I'm going to try to get it on all of the meat areas to give it a really good coating, and I'm going to put a little bit just on the exposed meat at the back end of the hock. And once I've got that all covered, I'm going to wash up, clean up my hands, and I'll talk about what the next phase and step is. If you played with silly dough when you were a kid, you're going to enjoy this. It's a similar texture, only a lot stickier. And when you're making up your Sugna, just make sure that you have more than enough. This is something that you don't want to chintz on. You want to make sure that all of the exposed areas that just have meat showing are going to be covered well and give it that protection it needs, so that it can dry really slowly and develop those wonderful flavors of your prosciutto. I'll put a little bit here just in the back of the hock. Want to make sure we have a real good coating around that ball socket that we exposed when we were butchering it up in the first part of the video. Well, there we go. We've got it all covered now and well protected. I'm going to clean up these hands.